right. So I'm here with my colleague Nathaniel Chua, who is from the Philippines and practices there. Owns his own private practice, seeing couples and individuals, and doing a lot of relationship work there in the Philippines. And Nathaniel, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on for today's, I'm really interested in this concept of essential coherence versus sort of functional coherence, or how they're distinct
Mhm,
from one another. And I know
mhm,
you've talked a lot about that in the past, and you've kind of seen it in your work with couples and relationships and individuals, and also there just maybe even as part of the culture in the Philippines. So if you can give me just like a kind of a top line, the idea, like what is essential coherence? How do you think of it in your practice? What is it that you're looking for that would cue you in? Oh, there's some essential coherence going on here. That would be great. I want to hear what's going on your end.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jacob. It's an honor to be here, and I'm glad I can do this with you. Um, it's been a while since we worked together, and this is something very that very often shows up in the counseling room, and the clients are not really aware that we follow rules without us knowing it. So essential coherence is about, let's say you learned as a child never to disappoint your parents.
Hmm.
Because if you don't obey what they say, you're a bad girl, you don't belong, your sister is better, your brothers are better, they're taller, they're skinnier,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know. So, as children, we have these outdated maps that I should never disappoint my parents. So I see that a lot in the young people that I meet, and they can go up to their 30s,
Oh
and
yeah,
they're still following the same rules, even 40s,
absolutely.
even really middle-aged adults who
Yeah.
who yeah, it's actually quite prevalent in Asian culture that the parents, their relationship with their parents has been a learning ground
Hmm.
for them to follow these rules that they should never disappoint people around them, especially those that they care about, you know. And another rule that shows up quite often, and I hear this from, other mainstream psychologists here in our country, is you should, when environment gets toxic, you should go away, rest, relax, or stay away from these people. So clients don't realize it, but that's a rule.
Yeah.
If
And
it's Yeah,
well, one thing that I wanted to kind of insert here is
yeah,
that the way that I think about it sometimes, in order to help me sort of
yes,
remember what essential coherence is that
mm,
there's this kind of essential quality to it where it's like, well, it's essentially true. My sister is skinnier and taller than me. That's essentially true, right? And so what
yes,
our thoughts will kind of latch onto what is
mm,
coherent logically, and kind
yes,
of see those justifications out in the environment. It's like, yeah, well, I
yes,
guess that's true. It makes sense logically. It's nice and simple. And then it
mm,
feeds back on itself because every time um,
yes,
I notice any sort of evidence
mm,
to support it, it
yes,
gives you a little hit of coherence of like, yep, I'm right. I'm right here.
yes, yes,
Um, and so that can kind of inwardly form those relational networks and
mm,
strengthen those relational networks, which can
mm,
become very rigid. And as you say, can basically
yeah,
last a lifetime. Uh,
yes,
I'm thinking in your example, even of this idea of parents and not
mm,
disappointing others,
yeah,
your family,
yeah,
or your own parents or other elders in your family, how that
mm,
can become even more complex parents age and are getting older
Yeah.
and are needing help and support with their health.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Now me and my family, I'm obligated now to provide
Hmm.
that support, even if what I want in life is to go in this direction over here. Um,
Yes.
I might have to let that go so I can attend to my parents because that's what I'm supposed to do. That's my duty as a son,
Yes.
or whatever, right? So we see those things all the time.
Yeah. In the clinical setting, in ABA, they call those reads and tells. You
Mm,
know,
mhm,
you uh, when the client says something, that's a tell. So read is more of body language. So when the client uses the words must, should, I
mhm.
should never disappoint my parents. So essential coherence is that rules that that say what should work. So again, you notice that word. I don't know. I was into psychodynamic therapy before, and there's actually a book. Uh, I think that one of the popular phrases that we passed on uh, through the generations. I think it was Karen Horney, uh, a neurotic. I forgot the title of her book. She called it the tyranny of the shoulds. You
Oh
know,
yeah. Hmm.
so these are essentially coherent words or language that we use, no? But uh, uh, functional coherence is that, uh, or functional coherence actually tells you what does work given the context that you are in. Because our work as psychologists or therapists is that, well, yeah, if you don't like the car, then sell it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you bad for doing that? Or you don't like the neighborhood
Mm,
because there's a lot of crime going on, right? So you move to another house. That's a rule, right? If then, right?
yeah.
Now we come in when, okay, now you're talking about your wife, your teenage son, or your in-laws who matter to your partner, you know? So how are you going to deal with that? You can't just say, go and leave your family, go to another
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood, you know? So, uh, so it's like, for instance, if you had a boss who was kind of difficult, you know, we learned that in act therapy, right? We like to do reason giving. You know, we have all these reasons not to exercise, not to stay in this toxic environment or workplace. So you end up hopping from one job to another, or maybe ending up not having a job at all, you know, or not progressing in your career. So yeah, and it can translate to so many things in society also, you know,
Yeah.
which mhm,
Well, I guess one of the things I want to pull out from what you're saying is
yes,
essential coherence does not care about the context. It's sort of context independent. It's sort of it imposes
yes,
itself as like a universal rule that can apply to any context,
yes,
but it actually doesn't
yes,
function in every context, right? And that's the
correct.
difference between functional coherence is
Or
there's still sort of rules, but
yeah,
they're tracked by what is actually happening in context. Um,
yes. So we
mhm.
call that workability.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. In the act, we call that workability. You know, so is it working for you? Is it helpful? Are you successful running away from your emotions? Well, you can run away from. In the Philippines, we have mosquitoes, right?
hmm
We have ways to repel mosquitoes. But how can you repel your own feelings? You know, and I forgot what book that was. I think it was the RFT book. It says like suicide is actually problem solving going awry.
sure. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
your feelings have become a problem to solve. I think Stephen Hayes would say that quite often.
Yeah,
Life has become a problem to solve. And I looked it up. I think Stephen Hayes says when it is reality, a process to be experienced. No, but I think
correct.
it was Kierkegaard who said it's a reality to be experienced.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's quoting who. It's probably I don't know.
But sure.
So it's probably Stephen Hayes because Kierkegaard went way ahead. So
Yeah, but we can see how this
yeah.
happens, in terms of even these kind of rigid rule following or cognitions. If I have a rigid self concept or self belief that I am
Yes,
worthless, if I'm
it
worthless,
is.
or if I am no good and bad and wrong, well, what do I
Mm-hmm.
do with things in the physical world? What do I do with things that are worthless to me? Well, I throw them away, right? I get rid of
Mm-hmm.
them. I put them in the trash, or I throw them in a fire and burn them, right? That's what I would do
Mm-hmm.
with a piece of garbage, right? So if I have these
Mm-hmm.
thoughts about myself, I'm a piece of garbage, I'm worthless, nobody wants me, then I might just
Mm-hmm.
throw myself away, right? I might actually end my own life as kind of an
Yes,
extension of that rule.
yes, yes. And one movie that I recently blogged about is Les Miserables.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know how to pronounce his name, Jean Valjean or Valjean, I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
And Javert.
Hmm.
So they're basically a contrast in functional and uh, or functional contextualism and essential coherence. So Javert saw people as essentially bad, you
Mm,
know,
hmm, hmm.
and he
Yes,
couldn't stand the fact that Jean Valjean changed into a different person. So he
correct.
ended up killing himself. So John, when he thought of himself as a bad person, and he experienced forgiveness. So there's a transformation of stimulus function, you know.
Hmm.
So we're kind of languaging all the time, and that's basically what I I argued in the book that I wrote is that sometimes in our culture we kind of rigidly hang on to these. Filipinos will do anything to game the system.
Mm,
They're not trustworthy. They're going to uh, skirt or work around the rules. So
mm,
we in turn make more rules and more rules and more rules. So what ends up happening is there's a lot of cost in doing starting a business here. So it kind of stunts the growth of the uh, economy.
mm,
Uh, People are not empowered, and there's a lack of trust among many Filipinos. So a lot of the rhetoric is, well, our problem is Filipinos. There are certain Filipinos who are essentially bad. We have to just hire those who have noble hearts.
I
Well,
see.
good luck with that. What happens? You get mass incarceration. You probably saw videos of how we jail people here. They're like packed like a can of sardines,
Yeah, yeah,
in our
yeah.
jails here. And I think that's your experience in the U.S. also. You know,
Well, yeah, I mean, there's many, many
yeah,
parallels, right? So right now, obviously, in the
yes,
United States, there's a lot of this rhetoric of you can be a good person, or
certain bad people.
there are certain
Yeah,
people that are bad simply because of their status,
yes,
legal status in the country.
yes,
If you're an undocumented immigrant, that automatically
yes,
means you're
yeah,
essentially a bad person or a drain on society, or you
yes,
know all kinds of really horrifying language can be used to amplify that, right? um,
yes,
and it's like augmenting it at large for the society of dehumanizing language, using dehumanizing language to really
yes.
emphasize this is how bad these people are. So
Mm,
that's an example of essential coherence, you know, gone awry or being used intentionally to subjugate
mm,
certain people or classes of people, even here
mm.
in the United States. So these
Yeah,
problems are not just individual, they don't just have an individual focus, right? They do create um,
yes,
impacts as a whole in society. And so
yeah,
one of the things that I really enjoy about ACT and its flexibility is,
mm,
even as a therapy, we can apply it one to one, in clinically, but there are people that are using ACT concepts and RFT concepts on a larger
mm,
scale societally, in terms of
mm.
some of these issues, climate change, other things like that as well.
Yeah. And I'd like to point out something here. It reminds me of uh, simple solutions. I work a lot also with couples.
Hmm.
In IBCT, I use IBCT. Uh, um, it's called simple solutions that couples come up with. All right. So when we fight, you should apologize, right?
Hmm.
So that's a rule you're following. You should say the words "I'm sorry"
Hmm.
or "I apologize," and there should be feelings that come with it, genuine feelings. Well, once you command it, then it's not genuine anymore, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and we're not cell phone. I use this a lot in my counseling work. We're not cell phones. If you download or let's say an app on your phone, and just with a click of your finger, it's going to perform that app almost 100% accurately, right?
Hmm.
Right. So, and that's how fast it goes, right? But we don't learn that way. You know,
Sure.
your culture may be different from your partner's culture. You're going to be different. But when he or she or they are not apologizing, then you turn them into defective people,
Yes.
yeah, instead of just different, you know. So and then you enforce that rule, that essential rule that okay, some people argue with, well, when we fight, I like to talk about it. We have to
Hmm.
talk about it before
Hmm.
the sun goes down, right? Uh, the other person would say, "No, I need a break.
Yeah.
I want to kind of cool off before I can talk some sense, right?" So they end up in an impasse, and then they come up with the rule. Either it's a compromise or one wins over the other. But guess what? We're not cell phones. We're not going to learn new behavior with just in just one sitting and having an agreement, either verbally, and some couples even write it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you fight about something more than what you fight about already. You fight about the rule that you just uh, introduced into the relationship, you know. And one of you will build resentment because that's not my rule. That's not how I grew up with.
Hmm.
I just say sorry, or I just say sorry in a way that I say, "Oh, have you had dinner?" I don't really like saying the word sorry, but I do it in other ways. So,
Hmm.
well, how can you be more aware of that the context? That's also one thing I learned. The relationship is not about two static people that don't change.
Yeah.
Relationship is a context that you build together. And I was just kind of connecting. I'm not sure if I'm correct. I'm kind of connecting with there's an old phrase we use, relation we build the relationship, right?
Hmm.
So in the language that we use now, um, you're building a context. So you're a different person when you're beside a clergy.
Yeah.
You're a different person when you're beside your friends, right?
Hmm.
So, but your mind doesn't notice. You don't notice that. But your mind is saying, "Oh, you can only be this way with your spouse or with your kid or with your government or with your uh, what do you call this, constituents, right?"
Yeah. Exactly.
Something like that. So you're following a rule, so you're not noticing it, but You can actually be kind. I use this a lot when you go to a party and you your good friend is celebrating his or her or their 80th birthday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you end up sitting with someone you don't really enjoy, right? Being with. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna walk out because the rule says don't stay with toxic people, right? But you don't. You stay, right? But your mind tells you, well, if my husband or my wife or my kid or my parents do something irritating or annoying or hurtful, well, usually it's just irritating at the start. You
Yeah.
know, when arguments start, it usually starts. You know, it's the least egregious part of uh, the whole fight. But when you get into that negative loop, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
negative feedback loop that we discussed before, right? You end up uh, being more and more, let's say, responsible for how this turned from you just forgot your socks into I don't want this. I'm gonna leave. You know, this relationship. Let's start a
Yes.
divorce process. So
Yes.
it's more blameworthy towards the end or towards the middle. But if you notice it at the start, then that you're being essentially coherent. You should never leave your socks there. Oh well, we do it with our dogs. You know, I mean, if you get a poodle, you don't expect it to be a guard dog.
Mm-hmm.
When you get
Mm-hmm.
a guard dog, you don't expect it to be a play dog, right? Or and do you throw them away? No, you love them nonetheless, right? So that's where sometimes in IBCT we use it. We use a way of coping with these differences that may never change. You know, if you married someone who liked golf,
Mm.
you can go into retirement, well into retirement, and he still likes golf, right? Uh, uh, Acceptance, being able, humor, through humor, and when couples talk about pay tribute to one another, they usually laugh, say, have their own inside jokes together, right? And usually they joke about what irritates them about the partner,
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Because it becomes something objective, something outside the two of you. It's a context that you're building.
Yes.
It's not your partner is essentially bad,
That's right.
you
So,
know.
in other words, yeah, even with, in individuals and in relationships, we can basically create contexts from scratch. This
Right.
context exists just between you and me. Nobody else in the world has to understand this context at all. But we can have our own
Yes.
kind of private world with our own language that means certain things, right?
Yes.
Phrases or cute names for each
Yes.
other that only we are basically allowed to say. Because if somebody else said it to us, we'd be like, "What?" But within the context of the relationship, we can
Yeah.
basically use that as a skill or a
Yes.
tool to help even
Yes.
sort of defuse some of these
Yes.
fights or arguments or conflicts by,
Yes.
you know, can we shift into this context here as two
Uh,
partners playfully kind of building a relationship together, right? Versus on two opposite sides, this is you're wrong and you
yes.
need to change over there, right? Kind of attitude.
Yes. That's actually a rule.
That's right.
That's essential clearance, right?
Mm-hmm.
My partner has to change before I will change.
Yeah.
I will be happy when my partner changes.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that book, Mastering the Clinical Conversation. One of the questions there is, well, if you notice, can we go with that thought for a while? What does that suggest you do?
Mm.
Well, you just have to wait, right? So basically, I often mention this. Even if we go to the hardest of hardest places, like the biggest prison community here in the Philippines, I don't think there will be anyone who will tell you that was born to kill or steal, right?
Yeah.
Uh, because given the right context, humans will tend to cooperate, and that was the biggest change I found in contextualism or functional contextualism. Is um, I saw my clients in a different way, that they're not defective, they're not bad people. They don't have some kind of history that you have to dig up and try to resolve, or some thought that you have to remove, or
Hmm.
so coming from those backgrounds, I'm not, I mean, they have their points, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to dismiss them. They were very helpful in my growth as a therapist. But one thing I learned in ACT and contextual behavioral science is
Hmm.
the way I see the person in front of me, and the way I see how society, if the government wants the people to cooperate, and you just go by rules that, oh, this is you, you this rule, you have to follow this rule, and it becomes too difficult that the context doesn't allow the person to cooperate the legal way, you know. So
Mm.
they end up doing cooperating among themselves, and that's labeled as corrupt, so you are corrupt now. But what we don't see is that we've built a context where cooperation doesn't pay off,
Yeah.
because we're gonna make rational decisions along the way, you know. So when you put a lot of barriers, then okay, then well, let's do it the illegal way, which is much more convenient, costs less,
Hmm.
and so it ends up uh, not creating a context where people can choose the cooperative move or cooperative action. So given That's the whole thing, is that given the right context, we would want to cooperate. I mean, who wants to go to bed thinking that feeling guilty and worried about looking behind over your shoulder? Somebody might see me or something like that.
Hmm.
So, um, uh, so that's part of what I argued in the book. So, yeah.
Yeah. And even just thinking about that in terms of evolution, right? Like we're social animals, we're social mammals. We come from a line of
Yes.
our close relatives are fairly
Yes.
social. So we evolved the capacity to be cooperative because it's a tool that we use, right? Cooperation
Mm,
itself is a tool that we can use to achieve
yes.
some goals. Same thing
Yeah.
with our feelings, right? We evolved the capacity to feel deeply, to have very complex emotional experiences, or what we
Mm,
define as emotional experiences.
mm,
We evolved the capacity to think in very complex ways, to plan the future and
yes.
think about the past and create scenarios that don't exist and imagine,
Yeah.
futures and stuff like that. Because these things are tools, we can use them in
Yes.
a way that can
Yes.
uh, uh, take us toward, hopefully what
Yes.
matters to us, right?
Yes.
And we can also use those same tools for
Yeah.
other purposes, right? To accumulate wealth or greed, like to wall ourselves off from other people. Me and my people are the ones that matter, and everyone else doesn't, right? So these things have, we often call it like a double-edged sword, but really it's sort of just a sword. A sword can be used for
Yeah.
purposes that are um, cooperative and helpful, and a sword can be used in ways that
Yes.
harm others. Um,
Yes.
and we're not always on the same uh, path in terms of
Yeah.
I want to achieve the exact same goal, right? As human beings, um,
Yeah.
and that's just the nature of our
Yeah.
species, right? As compared
Mm,
to say like a hive species like ants or bees, right?
yeah.
Basically, everyone in that community every ant and every bee all has sort of the same goal. We want to protect the queen. We want to gather food for
Yes.
the hive, the
Yes.
colony.
Yes.
They all
Yes.
have the same goal, and most of their behavior is oriented towards that goal. Uh,
Yeah.
Whereas human beings, we're not like that. We're social, but we're not all um,
Yeah.
dictated by the exact same motivations.
Yeah. And yeah, well, I did just this morning. I was looking through. Uh, so how do you apply RFT with trust? Well, it's basically a transformation of stimulus functions. So what we need here in our country is that we need to start trusting the government. But how do you build that trust? Well, you
Mm,
have to turn it into a facilitator rather than a big barrier, you know. And you have to, it's the Eleanor Ostrom eight design principles,
mhm.
which, you also have to build transparency, that they know where their taxes are going, et cetera, that they benefit when it's like a part of the game theory. So
Yeah.
yeah, you give some to take some or something like that. I'm not too familiar with that game theory thing, but that's how I see it. So it's not about good or bad people. It's really about are we creating a context, no?
Yeah.
Um, and I it's also like if we follow essential coherence, it's like a verbal trap. You know,
Hmm.
okay, since I don't get along with my in-laws, I'll just avoid them, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so okay, well that feels good. There's some relief, immediate relief to doing that, but eventually you end up feeling like, okay, my husband is now disappointed with me, you know, so maybe I'm not a good enough wife, something like that, you know. So you end up from just feeling disappointed with your relatives to disappointed with yourself for being such a bad wife, you know. So yeah, at its core, psychology is basically just life will give you problems. Now what do you do that doesn't add on to those problems? If it adds on, then maybe it's not psychologically flexible or
Mm,
functionally coherent. Like if you're toxic people, then in counseling we kind of like give them, we're kind of like a guide to show them that your current option is really not working. So why to make them realize experientially,
hmm.
Uh, so what if we tried something else, different? Like, okay, you've gone abroad, you spent a month on leave from work, and when you come back, the depression is still there. The depressing thoughts are still there. They didn't go away. The fights start coming back after a short little honeymoon, second honeymoon, right?
Hmm.
Well, how do you face that challenge in a functional way, rather than essentially saying, "Oh, my husband should never disappoint me. My wife should always apologize. She
Yeah.
should initiate the repair attempts." I use the Gottman term, right? Repair attempts. You know, so yeah, so basically that's kind of just. I remember this from Act Matrix, the Act Matrix book. The only rule your clients are asked to follow is to be more noticing,
Yes. Yes.
and part of it is noticing your values also, right? Like
Exactly.
when you don't leave the birthday party, well, why? Because you love that person who's celebrating that birthday. Those are your values. Being loving, being, it's a verb or an adverb,
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. A couple things come to mind as you're saying that. One of them is, again, when it comes to essential coherence, another way to think of
Yeah.
it too that helps it stick in my brain is when we have that very rigid verbal network
Hmm.
that is kind of narrowing our behavior. The essential
Yes.
quality becomes like like it has to be. In other words, that I am a bad person is essential to my. It becomes essential to my character, or
Mm,
that I am X, Y, or Z. That's an essential
mm,
part of who I am after a while,
yes,
and almost like
yes,
if somebody were to say to me, "No, you're not a bad person. You're a good person,"
yes,
that it's going to bounce
yes,
right off of me. I'll say, "No, I don't
yes,
believe it. It won't. I'll think it's
yes,
a lie, right?"
yes.
Um, and then the other thing, I guess what you were saying there is like when it comes to that idea of functional coherence, um, we want clients to experience it experientially based on
Mm,
the consequences of their own actions, essentially. Because if
mm,
we just tell them how their behavior, could function, a more
mm,
functional rule would be this, and we just tell it to our clients, and they
mm.
and they just take it and follow it. Well, they're just following a rule that they were
Yeah,
given, right? They have to
yeah,
actually experience it and
yes,
track
yes,
the outcomes, and
yes.
then it can kind of create that more consistent verbal network on their end, based on functional coherence.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I realized, because here in the Philippines, it's hard to get functional contextualists or people who practice contextual behavioral science. So I don't really have anyone except I have to talk to people like you or some people in the US or
Mm-hmm.
even I went through workshops with Russ Harris. Um, of course, not personally online.
Yeah.
So what I do now is I use AI to kind of be my sounding board.
Mm-hmm.
If I say this, then he notices it. Well, okay, now when you say that, it sounds like a rule.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so like um, let's say acceptance. If you say something like, "Okay, what if I accept my wife? Then maybe he will change. She will change." So I mean, so I didn't realize that when I use AI like a sounding board, he notices that and says, "Okay, now be careful with that. You're sounding like you're giving them a rule or essential coherence. That okay when I do this, and then when it doesn't happen, that their partners don't change, right? And
Yeah.
then that blows up in your face. So I am learning every day. The thing about this is like Stephen Hayes would say, it's not difficult because it's effortful. It's difficult because it's tricky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you have to be really watchful of, are you giving them a rule to follow, or are you giving them an opportunity to learn from the experience they're having now in the counseling room? So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, and I think we can kind of
yeah,
tweak some of the language we use with clients too. So for example, if I notice myself giving kind of a straight rule, if you do
mm,
this, then X, Y, or Z will happen, right? Trying to
yes,
transform that into something like, um, what might happen if this,
yes,
what do you think, right? And kind of letting them fill in some of the blanks, or creating some context, using an imaginal exercise where, imagine this scenario, right? If you can kind of get into your body, imagine this context that you're in, and we can kind of play
mm,
it through. Notice, this is how you have been doing
mm,
it. And what if we imagine this other scenario, right? What do you notice happens next? Or, you can kind of predict, and then
yeah,
afterwards, okay, now that's still in the mind though, right? I
yeah,
wonder if what would happen if we actually did it out here, right? In
yeah,
next time, would you be willing
yes,
to try some of this out and just see how it actually
mm,
does work, or not work for you?
yes,
Because we don't know. It's an experiment.
yes, yeah. That's what we call in RFT is deictic framing.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
you travel through time, place, and person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I don't know, from my practice, that's kind of very helpful to reminding them of what they value. what they want to be in the moment with the
Hmm.
challenge that they're facing, living each moment in the present, or living life moment by moment, because you will notice in the counseling room that your client will be storytelling, ruminating, predicting. So it's all in the past and the future. And, I try to slow that down and say, okay, can we focus on this moment? And I love that. I love what you said. I'm kind of a more of a teacher in the counseling room, so I really have to
Oh,
learn
same,
some of
same.
the.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have a tendency to be very impatient sometimes with my clients, so I try to just dictate things, be more didactic. So I'm still learning. I mean, I'm 60 years old. I turned 60 last year,
Oh, yeah,
and I'm still learning. I wish I could have done this earlier in my life. So I started counseling in my late 40s, I think, or mid 40s, and the early 50s, and throughout, and then I haven't looked back since then, and I just started acting 2019, so
sure.
still learning.
Well, I can guarantee you, even when you're 100 years old, you will still be learning, I think. And maybe at that time you'll be glad to still be learning, right? Because that means
Fun
you're,
job, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much,
Uh,
Nathan. I really appreciate the conversation, that we've been having. I think this helps me understand essential coherence and functional coherence a little bit more, even just having this conversation with you. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here, and happy to see you again, buddy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, take care.